Hey guys, Spence here at Core 4x4. Today we have a 4th gen Ram 2500 in the shop, and today I'm going to be showing you our new 2.5 ton steering upgrade for these later generation Ram 25 and 3500 models. But before we get into that, I want to get the truck in the air and get penetrating fluid on all the tie rod ends, because if you've ever worked on steering, that is your best friend when taking steering apart. So let's get it in the air and get into it. Now, while the penetrating fluid is doing its job, I wanted to take a minute and talk about the kit before we got to install. Now, this is our new 2.5 ton steering upgrade that fits the Ram 2500 from 2014 to 2024, as well as the Ram 3500 from 2013 to 2024. Now, if you have an older model Ram, we also make kits for you. Those will be linked down below. But for today, we're going to talk about the kit for the newer generations. Now, this kit includes a new tie rod as well as a new drag link, and of course your steering stabilizer clamp. Now, both the tie rod and the drag link are built from 7075 aluminum. Now, the reason we use that material is because it has what is called memory. And now all that means is that if you hit a rock or bounce off something, your tie rod's not going to bend and you're not going to lose your alignment. It's just going to bounce right back. Now, if you've done that on your factory tie rod, you know that as soon as you hit a rock, it's going to bend, it's going to throw out your alignment, you're going to lose your toe, and you're going to have to get a whole new tie rod. On top of the aluminum, we have partnered with Apex for all of our tie rod ends and our steering linkage. They have been awesome joints to use in all our products, and we're excited to be using them on this steering kit as well. So that wraps it up for what comes in the kit. Let's get under the truck, we'll start teardown, and then we'll get into install and alignment. All right, so before we get into teardown, I want to take a couple measurements just so we can get close on our alignment when we're putting everything back in. Now, the drag link here is what connects your steering wheel to your tires directly. It's actually what's going to set whether or not your steering wheel is centered. So we kind of want to be close on that because it's really annoying to have your steering wheel off when you're driving down the road. This truck is going to get alignment after the install, but we want to be close just so we can drive it. So the drag link is probably the most difficult piece to measure because you have one tie rod end mounted under and one tie rod end mounted over. Now, there is a round cap sort of thing on this tie rod end. We're just going to shoot for center on that round piece, and then we'll go all the way underneath and we'll go to the center of the bolt on our pitman arm, and that should give us a close enough center to center that we can set up our drag link when we go to put the new one in. Now, we're not going to measure our tie rod until we take the drag link off, because the drag link's kind of in our way to get the best center to center measurement, and I'll show you why when we get to that. Okay. Center of bolt to center of cap, right at 39 3/4. So we're going to write that down. Now, all of your factory tie rod ends are going to have the 13/16 wrench or a ratchet or a breaker bar. It's only like 70 foot-pounds, so hopefully they're not that tight. All right, we're gonna give these a smack with a hammer and hopefully they just pop out.
What?
Other side falls. This reminds me of the jail. Holy shit, we got it. So normally if you're lucky, you just need a little pressure or shock to bust your tie rods loose. We used the pickle fork pressure, heat, and shock, and we ruined our tie rod boot, which you're not too worried about. I did forget to mention alignment is already off on this truck. The tires, you can see, are wearing on the inside more than the outside. All right, so now that our drag link's out of the way, it's going to be much easier to measure our tie rod, and we're going to pull that measurement before we get it off. But we're just going to go from bolt to bolt, and with the drag link in the way, you can't really get on top of your passenger side bolt, but now we can. If you're doing this by yourself, you can usually just hook it on the bolt and you'll go the outside of one bolt to the inside of the other is the same as center to center. 61 3/8 on this tie rod. I'm gonna write that down, and that's gonna be our starting point for the new one. So take the tie rod off, we're gonna take the stabilizer, we're gonna leave it bolted to the axle because it's just gonna bolt to our new mount, but we're We're gonna take this bolt off and then we can take the tie rod out. All right, your factory stabilizer bolt is 18 mil. Got it. Here we go. All right, so now that we got the factory tie rod and drag link out, we're gonna get the new ones on and we're just gonna go in the reverse order. So we are gonna start with the tie rod because again, it's easier to measure with the drag link out. We are gonna do all our measurements on the truck just because it's easier to adjust, easier to measure, and just easier to get everything dialed in. You can measure off the truck before you put it in. But like I said, there's no point. It's just easier to do it on. So I'm gonna grab the new tie rod, we'll get it in, we'll set it at our measurements, and then we'll go from there. This thing is heavy. Okay, so we got this mocked up here. We are gonna torque down our tie rods. Now the torque spec on these nuts for the tie rod ends is 63 to 67 foot-pounds. We're gonna leave the jam nuts alone because we're gonna do all our adjusting, but we're gonna lock down all our jam nuts at about 200 foot-pounds. Now, I say that in all our videos, 200, 250 foot-pounds. You're not gonna get that on a lot of your torque wrenches. You're gonna get these jam nuts as tight as you possibly can, and we do have these serrated crush washers, which really help keep your jam nuts tight. But after we get our measurements set, we'll do the jam nuts. We'll throw a paint mark on so we can watch them and make sure they don't move on us. But if you get them to 250 foot-pounds and then you recheck them after a settling period of about 500 miles, they should never move on you, and they should be good. You got it. Okay. There we go. All right, so we got this in, we got it torqued down. We're gonna hold off on the steering stabilizer until we get this set, just to make sure those bolts are just out of the way of our measurements. Now our factory tie rod was 61 3/8. So we're gonna go ahead and try to match that, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, we're about 61, so we're gonna adjust out a little bit. So on all our steering kits, we put a notch, we machine a notch in the left-hand side. Your passenger is gonna be your left-hand side, so if you need to adjust out, you're just gonna spin the bar up like this, or if you need to adjust in, you can just spin the bar down. On this one, we're gonna try zerk to zerk and see where we're at. We got our measurement pretty spot on, and that's just gonna be close. We know the toe's off because our tires are wearing a little weird, but this will be close enough to drive it to the alignment shop. Now, ideally, you would just snug down your jam nuts, get it aligned, and then do the torquing down, but I wanted to show it. We're not gonna get to the alignment shop today, so I wanted to show you how to torque the jam nuts. For me, I got a big pipe wrench and a cheater bar, and I wanna emphasize again, you cannot get these too tight. Like 250 foot-pounds is the spec. It's really hard to get, and we're not gonna have a torque wrench to get on this. So we're gonna get it as tight as we can with the pipe wrench and the cheater bar. Now, before we go really tightening on these jam nuts, there is about 4 degrees of rotation or flop built into the tie rod ends, just so these can function and move more smoothly. So we wanna be careful when we're tightening our jam nuts so that we're not tightening the tie rod end all the way at one end of that range of flop. We want it right in the middle. So the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna tighten one side. We're gonna start with the passenger side, then we're gonna check and make sure our tie rod ends are in the middle of that range, and then we're gonna tighten the other side, and hopefully we end up with that full 4 degrees of flop. If you have a little bit less, that's okay. You just need a little range of movement in your tie rod ends so you don't wear them out, and so everything can function and move as it should. So this is the rotation or the flop I was talking about, and if we tighten our jam nut all the way up like that, we're gonna be at the far edge of the range. So we just gotta tighten it somewhere in the middle. We can reef on this one because the other one's not tight, but when we get the other one set, we want it about right there in the middle of the range. And it's not much, but like I said, you just need a little bit of movement for this to function right. can't go too tight on these. What I'm doing here is I'm spinning this and watching the passenger tie rod until I get in the middle range. So there's one way, there's the other, and then we're gonna move it back to middle, and then, oh, this side is right about there. So that's about the middle of our range. And now that we got that, you can see the whole bar has a little bit of movement in it, and that's exactly what you're looking for. Now we can tighten down this jam nut without really worrying about that. All right, so our tie rod ends are torqued down, our jam nuts are torqued down for alignment. We're gonna install the steering stabilizer bracket and reinstall the factory stabilizer. Now this bracket is built to use any stock replacement steering stabilizer. On this truck, since it's a 2019, we're just gonna leave the factory one on here. It's still in good shape. This all bolts together, and torque spec on these is 80 foot-pound. Okay, so before I bolt this in, this top plate that has the Apex logo on it, that goes down and in just like this. That's the orientation of the steering stabilizer. Okay, let's get the drag link in. Now I did want to point out your passenger side knuckle of your drag link is the same as your two tie rod ends. They are locking nuts, so you do have to grab on like I did with the vice grips to that top stud in order to tighten them all the way down. Or if you can get a good seat with the taper, you might be able to tighten against that, but we're just gonna use the vice grips. Your pitman arm, however, is 80 foot-pounds on the torque spec, and it does have a cotter pin. The pitman arm is always special. Everything's harder in the air above your head. Here we go. There we go. Got it. Okay, let's get our measurement. Okay, so our measurement on the drag link was 39 3/4. See where we're at, 39 3/8. So we're gonna adjust out a little bit. Same thing with the tie rod. You just spin this tube up. There we go. 39 3/4. Now we're not gonna go crazy on these jam nuts like we did to show them, but we are gonna snug them up to get it to the alignment shop. And then when we get it back from alignment, we'll get them really torqued down. Now, this is the same as the tie rod. You don't wanna be at the edge of your range of your motion on your tie rod ends. So again, you wanna get the center of your flop, tighten down passenger side again, even though I just did the pitman arm side, and then we'll check our range. Okay guys, so that wraps it up for teardown and install of the new 2.5 ton steering upgrade on the Ram behind me. I wanted to go over a few of the tools we use, so if you're doing this at home, you can be ready. We use 13/16 wrench and socket, as well as a 19 and an 18 millimeter. For our jam nuts, we did use this big pipe wrench with a cheater bar, and I don't have that here. A pickle fork, a set of pliers. We did use the vice grips to grab our studs in order to tighten down our lock nuts. A ratchet, a torque wrench, a pry bar, and for that pitman arm, we did use a few hammers and some heat. That can be the most stubborn of all the tie rod ends, is that pitman arm one. So a little bit of shock, heat, and pressure is really what you need to get that one apart. I think we struggled for like an hour. God, that felt like forever. That was the worst one of the video. Other than that, if you're good on a wrench, this could take about 45 minutes to an hour to do this at home. This truck is all done. Jam nuts are snugged up because we are gonna go to the alignment shop. When they get back, we are gonna go to that 250 foot-pounds. We'll paint mark them and we'll check them after 500 miles. Make sure to do that. The jam nuts are the most important part of this install. You don't want your steering shifting on you or moving on you when you're driving. But other than that, I love you guys. If you guys have any questions about this steering kit or any of our other products, feel free to reach out to sales@core4x4.com or comment down below. And as always, like and subscribe because that really helps us out in what we're doing here. Let us know what you want to see, and we'll catch you in the next one. Don't forget the tape measure.